One of the deepest reasons a narcissist struggles to genuinely love their children is because they do not see them as separate human beings. Instead, they often view their children as extensions of themselves. This may sound difficult to understand at first, but it explains countless painful experiences that many sons and daughters endure throughout their lives. Every healthy relationship begins with recognizing another person's individuality. Healthy parents understand that their children are unique. They realize that each child comes into the world with their own personality, talents, interests, dreams, strengths, and weaknesses. A healthy parent sees their role as helping that child discover who they were created to become. They guide, encourage, protect, and support the child's journey toward becoming an independent individual. A narcissistic parent, however, often approaches parenting from a completely different perspective. Instead of asking, "Who is this child becoming?" they unconsciously ask, "How does this child reflect on me?" The focus is not on the child's identity, but on the parent's image. The child becomes a mirror rather than a person. This is why many children of narcissists feel as though they are constantly performing. They quickly learn that approval comes when they make the parent look good. If they excel in school, the parent boasts about their achievements. If they win awards, the parent proudly displays them. If they choose a career that enhances the family's reputation, they receive praise and attention. But the moment they pursue a path that does not align with the parent's expectations, support often disappears. The tragedy is that the child's value becomes connected to how well they serve the parent's needs. Their successes are celebrated not because the parent is genuinely happy for them, but because those successes enhance the parent's image. The child becomes a trophy to display rather than a soul to nurture. Many children raised in these environments grow up feeling confused. They wonder why their accomplishments never seem enough. No matter how hard they work, how much they achieve, or how much they sacrifice, the standards keep changing. The reason is simple. The issue was never their performance. The issue was that they were trying to satisfy a need that can never truly be satisfied. A narcissist's desire for validation is endless. As children begin developing their own identities, conflict often emerges. This is a natural stage of growth. Every healthy child eventually starts forming independent opinions, making personal choices, and discovering individual passions. They may choose different hobbies, different careers, different values, or different lifestyles than their parents expected. A healthy parent sees this as growth. A narcissistic parent often sees it as rejection. Why? Because when the child begins becoming their own person, the illusion of control starts to break. The child is no longer acting as an extension of the parent's identity. They are becoming an independent individual with their own voice. For the narcissistic parent, this can feel threatening. As a result, criticism may increase. The parent may mock the child's interests, dismiss their goals, compare them to others, or constantly pressure them to conform. Some children are told that their dreams are unrealistic. Others are made to feel guilty for making choices that differ from family expectations. Many spend years suppressing their authentic selves in order to maintain peace and receive approval. The emotional damage can be profound. A child who is never allowed to develop their own identity often grows into an adult who struggles to know who they truly are. They become experts at pleasing others while remaining strangers to themselves. They spend years seeking external validation because they were never taught to value their own voice. Yet it is important to understand something that can be incredibly healing. The narcissistic parent's inability to recognize your individuality is not evidence that your individuality lacks value. Their blindness does not diminish your worth. A person who cannot appreciate a diamond does not change the value of the diamond. The healthiest parents understand that children do not belong to them. They are entrusted to them. Their responsibility is not to create copies of themselves, but to help another human being discover their own unique purpose. Real love celebrates individuality. Real love encourages growth. Real love makes room for differences. A child was never created to carry a parent's unfinished dreams, damaged ego, or desperate need for validation. A child was created with a unique identity, a unique calling, and a unique path. The greatest gift any parent can give is the freedom to become that person. When a narcissist sees their child merely as an extension of themselves, genuine love becomes impossible because true love requires recognizing another person's separate existence. Love says, I see you. Love says, I accept who you are. Love says, you do not have to become me in order to be valuable. And that is the very thing a narcissistic parent often struggles to understand. Their focus remains fixed on themselves, while true love always has the courage to focus on someone else. One of the most painful realities about a narcissistic parent is that they often crave admiration more than genuine connection. At first, this can be difficult to recognize because many narcissistic parents appear deeply involved in their children's lives. They may constantly talk about their children, boast about their accomplishments, and present themselves to others as devoted parents. From the outside, it may even look like love. But when you look beneath the surface, you begin to notice a troubling pattern. The relationship is not built around understanding the child. It is built around what the child can provide to the parent. Healthy love is focused on connection. It seeks to know, understand, support, and nurture another person. It asks questions. It listens carefully. It celebrates individuality. It creates a safe environment where a child can express thoughts, emotions, fears, and dreams without fear of rejection. Genuine connection requires humility because it acknowledges that another person's needs matter just as much as your own. A narcissistic parent, however, often approaches relationships differently. Their deepest emotional need is not connection, but admiration. They want to feel important, respected, praised, and superior. Their sense of worth depends heavily on external validation. As a result, they begin looking to their children not as individuals to love, but as sources of emotional supply. The child becomes someone who is expected to provide attention, praise, loyalty, and validation. This dynamic can shape the entire relationship. When the child succeeds, the narcissistic parent may appear excited and supportive, but the excitement is often tied to how the achievement reflects on them. The child's accomplishments become trophies displayed to enhance the parent's image. The focus shifts away from the child's growth and toward the recognition the parent receives from others. Instead of saying, I am proud of who you are becoming, the underlying message becomes, you make me look good. This creates enormous pressure on the child. They begin to feel that their value depends on performance. They learn that praise comes when they excel, obey, or fulfill expectations. Over time, they may stop asking themselves what they truly want and begin focusing entirely on what will earn approval. Their identity becomes shaped by the desire to keep the parent pleased. The tragedy is that admiration can never replace connection. A child does not simply need food, shelter, and education. A child needs emotional security. They need to know that they are loved for who they are, not for what they achieve. They need to feel seen, heard, and understood. They need a parent who notices their fears, acknowledges their struggles, and supports their emotional development. Because narcissistic parents are often preoccupied with their own needs, they may struggle to provide this kind of emotional presence. Conversations frequently revolve around the parent. The child's experiences may be dismissed, interrupted, minimized, or redirected. If the child shares a problem, the parent may make the discussion about themselves. If the child seeks comfort, they may receive criticism instead. If the child expresses feelings that challenge the parent's self-image, those feelings may be ignored altogether. As a result, many children of narcissistic parents grow up feeling invisible. They may have received attention, but not understanding. They may have been noticed, but not truly known. They may have been praised, but not genuinely valued. This distinction is important because attention and love are not the same thing. A person can receive a great deal of attention while still feeling emotionally neglected. Many adult children carry the effects of this dynamic into later life. They become people pleasers, constantly seeking approval from others. They struggle with self-worth because they were taught that love must be earned. They may feel anxious when someone is disappointed in them, or guilty when they prioritize their own needs. Some spend years chasing validation in relationships, careers, or social circles, hoping to fill an emotional void that began in childhood. The truth is that real love does not demand constant performance. Real love is not dependent on achievement, perfection, or obedience. Genuine love creates freedom. It allows a person to make mistakes, learn, grow, and develop their own identity. It values the person more than the benefit they provide. When a parent values admiration more than connection, the child often becomes an audience instead of a son or daughter, a source of validation instead of a human being. This is why so many children of narcissistic parents feel emotionally exhausted. They are not relating to someone who wants to know them deeply. They are relating to someone who constantly needs to be fed with attention and praise. Understanding this truth can be incredibly liberating. It helps people realize that the lack of emotional connection was never caused by a deficiency within them. They were not too difficult to love. They were not unworthy of affection. They were simply dealing with someone whose need for admiration was greater than their capacity for genuine emotional intimacy. And once that reality is understood, the journey toward healing, self-respect, and healthy relationships can truly begin. One of the deepest reasons a narcissist struggles to truly love their children is their lack of empathy. Empathy is more than simply recognizing that someone is upset. It is the ability to step into another person's world, to understand their emotions, to feel concern for their struggles, and to respond with compassion. It is one of the most important foundations of healthy relationships, especially between a parent and a child. Without empathy, a parent may provide food, shelter, education, or material support, but they cannot provide the emotional connection that makes a child feel seen, understood, and valued. A healthy parent naturally pays attention to the emotional needs of their children. When a child comes home from school feeling rejected, the parent notices. When a child is afraid, the parent offers comfort. When a child experiences disappointment, the parent listens and provides encouragement. These moments may seem small, but they build the emotional security that every child needs in order to grow into a confident and healthy adult. A narcissistic parent often operates very differently. Their attention is usually focused on themselves, their own feelings, their own image, and their own needs. Because of this self-centered focus, they may struggle to recognize what their children are experiencing emotionally. Even when they do notice it, they may view those emotions as inconvenient, unnecessary, or exaggerated. Instead of asking, "What is my child feeling right now?" they often ask, "How does this affect me?" Imagine a child who comes to a parent in tears after being bullied at school. A healthy parent might sit down, listen carefully, and try to understand the child's pain. They may reassure the child that their feelings are valid and help them work through the situation. A narcissistic parent, however, may respond with criticism, dismissal, or impatience. They might tell the child they are being too sensitive. They might shift the conversation back to themselves. They might even become annoyed because the child's emotions are drawing attention away from them. Over time, the child learns an important but painful lesson. They learn that their feelings do not matter. They learn that expressing sadness, fear, or frustration often leads to rejection rather than support. As a result, many children of narcissistic parents begin suppressing their emotions. They stop sharing their struggles. They hide their pain. They become experts at pretending everything is fine because experience has taught them that vulnerability is not safe. This lack of empathy can also create confusion in the child's understanding of love. Most people assume that love includes care, understanding, patience, and emotional support. But when a child grows up in a home where empathy is absent, they may begin to associate love with criticism, neglect, or emotional inconsistency. They may spend years believing that being ignored is normal, that having their feelings dismissed is normal, or that constantly seeking approval is what relationships are supposed to look like. The tragedy is that many of these children carry these wounds into adulthood. They may struggle with self-worth because they were rarely made to feel important. They may become people pleasers because they learned that their value depended on meeting other people's expectations. They may find it difficult to trust others because the people who were supposed to understand them emotionally never truly did. It is important to understand that empathy is what allows love to grow. Love is not merely an emotion. It is a commitment to care about another person's well-being. It requires the ability to see beyond yourself. It requires the willingness to listen, understand, and respond to another person's needs. When empathy is missing, relationships become one-sided. The focus shifts away from connection and towards self-interest. This is why many narcissistic parents can appear loving when things are going well, but become cold, critical, or dismissive when their children need emotional support. They may enjoy being admired by their children. They may enjoy receiving praise and attention. They may even enjoy appearing to be a good parent in public. But true love reveals itself most clearly in moments of vulnerability, when someone needs understanding rather than performance. A child does not need a perfect parent. No parent gets everything right. What a child needs is a parent who is willing to understand their heart, acknowledge their feelings, and make them feel emotionally safe. Empathy creates that safety. Empathy tells a child, I see you, I hear you, your feelings matter. When empathy is absent, the child often feels invisible. They may be physically present in the family, yet emotionally alone. And that is why the lack of empathy is one of the clearest signs that a narcissistic parent struggles to love in a healthy way. Genuine love seeks to understand. Genuine love listens. Genuine love makes room for another person's emotions. But when a person's world revolves entirely around themselves, there is very little room left for anyone else's feelings, including those of their own children. One of the clearest signs of a narcissistic parent is their desire for control. Many people confuse control with care, authority with leadership, and obedience with love. But these are not the same things. A healthy parent understands that their responsibility is to guide a child toward maturity, confidence, and independence. A narcissistic parent, however, often has a different goal. Their focus is not on helping the child become who they were meant to be. Their focus is on ensuring that the child remains under their influence. There is a profound difference between nurturing a child and controlling a child. Nurturing helps a child discover their strengths. Control suppresses those strengths. Nurturing encourages questions. Control demands silence. Nurturing creates confidence. Control creates fear. When a child grows up under constant control, they often learn that their thoughts, feelings, and desires are less important than keeping the parent satisfied. A narcissistic parent may believe that they know what is best for everyone. They may insist that every decision, no matter how small, must pass through them. What clothes the child wears, what friends they choose, what hobbies they pursue, what career they follow, and even what dreams they are allowed to have may become subjects of control. The child is not treated as an individual with unique gifts and a personal destiny. Instead, they are treated as a possession that must remain within the boundaries established by the parent. This control often disguises itself as concern. The parent may say they are only trying to help. They may claim that everything they do is for the child's benefit. But genuine help empowers people. Genuine guidance teaches people how to think for themselves. Genuine leadership prepares people to stand on their own feet. Control does the opposite. Control creates dependence because dependence gives the narcissist a sense of power. The tragedy is that many children raised in such environments never develop trust in themselves. They become accustomed to having every decision questioned, criticized, or overridden. Over time, they begin to doubt their own judgment. Even as adults, they may struggle to make simple decisions because they have been conditioned to believe that their choices are never good enough. The controlling parent may not realize it, but they are weakening the very person they claim to be protecting. Healthy parenting recognizes that growth requires freedom. Every child must have opportunities to make mistakes, learn lessons, and develop wisdom through experience. Mistakes are not evidence of failure, they are part of development. But a narcissistic parent often fears losing control so much that they refuse to allow the child this necessary process. They may intervene constantly, criticize relentlessly, and discourage any attempt at independence. What makes this especially damaging is that control is often enforced through emotional manipulation rather than open force. The child may be made to feel guilty for wanting independence. They may be accused of being selfish, ungrateful, or disrespectful simply because they express a different opinion. The message becomes clear. Agreement is rewarded. Individuality is punished. As the child grows older, the desire for control often becomes even more intense. This is because independence represents a threat to the narcissistic parent's influence. A confident child is harder to manipulate. A self-aware child is harder to control. A mature adult who understands boundaries cannot be easily dominated. Instead of celebrating the child's growth, the narcissistic parent may perceive it as rejection or rebellion. But the purpose of parenting was never ownership. Children do not come into the world to fulfill a parent's emotional needs. They do not exist to become copies of their mother or father. Every child is born with unique abilities, unique dreams, and a unique purpose. The role of a parent is to help uncover those gifts, not suppress them. Great parents understand that success is not measured by how long a child remains dependent upon them. Success is measured by how effectively they prepare that child for life. Their goal is not to create followers who obey every command. Their goal is to develop capable, responsible, and confident adults who can navigate the world with wisdom and character. A narcissistic parent often seeks obedience because obedience protects their position. A healthy parent seeks growth because growth fulfills the child's potential. One seeks control, the other seeks development. One creates fear, the other creates confidence. One keeps people small, the other helps people become everything they were created to be. That is why control can never be a substitute for love. Love nurtures, love equips, love empowers. And true parenting is not about keeping a child under your authority forever. It is about preparing them to thrive long after they leave your side. One of the most damaging realities of a narcissistic parent is that they often view love as a transaction rather than a relationship. To understand this, we must first understand what genuine love is. Real love is not based on performance. It is not dependent on achievement. It does not disappear when mistakes are made. True love recognizes value in a person simply because they exist. A healthy parent may correct a child, discipline a child, or guide a child, but their love remains constant. The child knows that even when they fail, they are still accepted, still valued, and still worthy of care. A narcissistic parent, however, often operates from a completely different mindset. Their affection, approval, and attention may seem available only when the child fulfills certain conditions. The child quickly learns that praise comes when they achieve something impressive, when they obey without question, or when they make the parent look good in front of others. In these families, love becomes connected to performance rather than connection. This creates an invisible contract that the child never agreed to sign. The message becomes clear. If you make me proud, I will show you affection. If you reflect positively on me, I will give you attention. If you meet my expectations, I will treat you as valuable. Over time, the child begins to believe that love must be earned. Instead of feeling secure in the relationship, they constantly work to maintain it. Think about the emotional burden this places on a young mind. Children are not supposed to spend their lives proving their worth. Childhood is meant to be a season of growth, learning, exploration, and development. Mistakes are part of the process. Failure is part of the process. Yet a narcissistic parent often treats mistakes as personal offenses because the child's actions are seen as a reflection of the parent's image. As a result, the child may become obsessed with perfection. They strive to get the highest grades, win every competition, avoid every mistake, and meet every expectation, not because they are driven by healthy ambition, but because they are searching for something every child naturally desires: acceptance. They begin to believe that if they can just be good enough, successful enough, smart enough, or obedient enough, they will finally receive the love they have been seeking. The tragedy is that the goal keeps moving. No achievement is ever enough. No success permanently satisfies the narcissistic parent's need for validation. The child may accomplish one goal only to discover another demand waiting. They may receive praise one day and criticism the next. They may feel valued when they succeed and ignored when they struggle. This inconsistency creates deep emotional confusion. Many children raised in these environments carry these patterns into adulthood. They become people who cannot relax because they feel they must constantly prove themselves. They tie their self-worth to productivity. They feel guilty when they rest. They fear failure more than most people because failure feels connected to rejection. Even when they achieve remarkable success, they may still feel empty inside because they are chasing validation instead of experiencing genuine acceptance. What makes this especially painful is that the child often blames themselves. They assume they are not working hard enough. They believe they are somehow responsible for the lack of affection they receive. They spend years trying to unlock a door that was never meant to be opened through achievement. The problem was never a lack of effort on the child's part. The problem was the unhealthy way the parent understood love. Healthy love says, "I value you even when you fail." Healthy love says, "Your mistakes do not reduce your worth." Healthy love says, "You do not have to earn your place in my heart." But transactional love sends the opposite message. It teaches that acceptance must be purchased through performance. The most important lesson for anyone who has experienced this kind of upbringing is to recognize that their value was never tied to what they could produce. Human worth is not measured by achievements, titles, grades, income, or approval from others. Every person possesses inherent value simply because they are human. The inability of a narcissistic parent to recognize that value does not diminish it. The journey of healing often begins when a person finally understands that love and performance are not the same thing. You can fail and still be worthy. You can make mistakes and still deserve respect. You can disappoint people and still possess value. The moment you stop trying to earn what should have been given freely, you begin to reclaim your freedom. And in that freedom, you discover a truth that may have been hidden from you for years. Your worth was never something you had to prove. It was something you possessed all along. One of the most painful and confusing experiences for the child of a narcissistic parent is realizing that their parent seems uncomfortable with their growth. Most people assume that parents naturally want their children to become stronger, wiser, and more independent. In healthy families, this is exactly what happens. A loving parent celebrates every milestone. They cheer when their child learns something new, gains confidence, develops skills, and begins building a life of their own. They understand that the goal of parenting is not to create permanent dependence, but to prepare a child for adulthood. A narcissistic parent often operates differently. Their sense of identity and self-worth is deeply tied to control, admiration, and influence. As long as their child depends on them emotionally, financially, or psychologically, they feel secure. The child becomes a source of validation and a reflection of their importance. But when that child begins to develop independence, something changes. What should be viewed as healthy growth is often perceived as a threat. The narcissistic parent may not consciously think, "I don't want my child to succeed." In fact, they may proudly boast about their child's achievements when those achievements make them look good. The problem arises when success begins to create separation. The moment the child starts thinking independently, making personal decisions, questioning unhealthy behavior, or establishing boundaries, the narcissistic parent may feel as though they are losing power. This happens because narcissism is rooted in an excessive need for control and validation. Independence challenges both. A child who can think for themselves is harder to manipulate. A child who understands their worth is less likely to tolerate emotional abuse. A child who develops confidence no longer seeks constant approval. These changes threaten the narcissist's ability to remain the center of the child's world. As a result, the narcissistic parent may respond in ways that seem irrational or contradictory. They may criticize achievements that should be celebrated. They may minimize accomplishments that deserve recognition. They may become jealous of opportunities that bring the child happiness. Sometimes they even create unnecessary conflict during moments that should be joyful. Imagine a young adult who earns a promotion, starts a successful business, graduates from university, or builds a healthy relationship. Most parents would feel immense pride. Yet a narcissistic parent may respond with indifference, criticism, or subtle negativity. Instead of saying, "I'm proud of you," they may focus on flaws, compare the child to someone else, or shift attention back to themselves. This behavior leaves many children feeling confused. They wonder why their accomplishments never seem good enough. They wonder why every success is met with criticism rather than encouragement. Over time, they may begin doubting their abilities and questioning their value. The truth is that the issue is not the child's success. The issue is what that success represents. Success often brings freedom. Freedom creates independence. Independence reduces control, and reduced control feels threatening to a narcissistic parent. This fear can become especially visible when children begin setting boundaries. Healthy boundaries are a sign of emotional maturity. They allow individuals to protect their well-being while maintaining respectful relationships. But to a narcissist, boundaries can feel like rejection. The simple act of saying no may trigger anger, guilt-tripping, silent treatment, or manipulation. The narcissistic parent may accuse the child of being selfish, ungrateful, disrespectful, or disloyal. They may attempt to make the child feel guilty for pursuing their own goals. They may portray independence as betrayal rather than growth. What makes this dynamic particularly tragic is that many children spend years trying to avoid conflict by shrinking themselves. They hide their achievements, they suppress their opinions, they abandon their dreams, they become smaller versions of themselves in an attempt to preserve peace. But true growth requires courage. Every individual was created with unique gifts, talents, and potential. Those gifts cannot flourish under the constant pressure of control. Personal growth demands freedom. It requires the ability to make mistakes, learn lessons, and develop an identity separate from the expectations of others. A healthy parent understands this principle. They know that love does not mean possession. Love means preparation. It means helping someone become capable of standing on their own. It means finding joy in another person's success, even when that success leads them down a path different from your own. The greatest tragedy of narcissistic parenting is not simply the control itself. It is the way control interferes with a child's ability to discover who they truly are. Yet the greatest victory for the child comes when they stop seeking permission to grow. The moment they embrace their own identity, trust their own judgment, and walk confidently toward their purpose, they begin breaking free from the limitations that were placed upon them. Their independence is not rebellion. It is the natural outcome of healthy development. It is evidence that despite every obstacle, they are becoming the person they were meant to be. One of the deepest reasons a narcissist struggles to genuinely love their children is that they place the protection of their ego above everything else. This is not always obvious in the beginning. Many narcissistic parents appear caring, involved, and even devoted. They may provide financially, attend important events, and speak proudly about their children in public. But beneath the surface, there is often a hidden priority that shapes every interaction, preserving their own self-image. Healthy love requires humility. It requires the ability to admit mistakes, accept imperfections, and put another person's needs ahead of personal pride. A healthy parent understands that parenting is not about appearing perfect. It is about helping a child grow into a confident, secure, and emotionally healthy adult. This means accepting that there will be moments when the parent is wrong, moments when they must apologize, and moments when the child's feelings deserve more attention than the parent's reputation. For a narcissist, however, the ego becomes the center of their world. Their identity is built on maintaining an image of superiority, importance, and control. Because this image is often fragile beneath the surface, they constantly work to protect it. Any challenge to that image feels threatening. Any criticism feels like an attack. Any disagreement feels like disrespect. This creates a painful dynamic within the parent-child relationship. Children naturally ask questions, express emotions, and develop opinions of their own. They make mistakes. They sometimes disagree. They occasionally point out inconsistencies. In a healthy family, these moments become opportunities for growth and communication. In a narcissistic family, they often become sources of conflict because the parent interprets them as threats to their authority and self-image. Imagine a child expressing hurt after being unfairly criticized. A healthy parent might pause, reflect, and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize my words affected you that way." Those simple words can strengthen trust and emotional connection, but a narcissistic parent often finds such admissions extremely difficult because apologizing requires acknowledging imperfection. Instead of taking responsibility, they may deny what happened, shift blame onto the child, minimize the child's feelings, or rewrite the story entirely. The reason is not that they do not understand what happened. The reason is that protecting their ego feels more important than protecting the relationship. Admitting fault threatens the image they desperately need to maintain. As a result, the child's emotional reality becomes secondary to the parent's need to feel superior and blameless. Over time, children raised in this environment learn painful lessons. They learn that their feelings are not safe to express. They learn that honesty may lead to punishment rather than understanding. They learn that maintaining peace often requires silence. Many begin doubting their own perceptions because their experiences are constantly dismissed or invalidated. This is where deep emotional wounds begin to form. Children naturally look to their parents for guidance, affirmation, and security. When a parent consistently prioritizes their ego over the child's well-being, the child often internalizes the problem. They start believing they are too sensitive, too demanding, or somehow responsible for the parent's reactions. They spend years trying to become good enough, successful enough, obedient enough, or impressive enough to finally earn the love and approval they crave. Yet no amount of achievement can solve the problem because the issue was never the child's worth. The issue was the parent's inability to place love above pride. True love requires vulnerability. It requires the courage to say, "I was wrong." It requires the strength to listen without becoming defensive. It requires the wisdom to value a relationship more than personal image. Narcissists often struggle with these qualities because their entire emotional world revolves around protecting a fragile sense of self. As children grow older and begin establishing independence, the problem often becomes even more noticeable. The child develops confidence, sets boundaries, and starts thinking independently. Instead of celebrating this growth, the narcissistic parent may feel threatened. Why? Because independent children are harder to control. They are less likely to provide constant validation. They are more likely to recognize unhealthy behavior and challenge it. At this stage, many narcissistic parents intensify criticism, guilt, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal. Once again, the goal is not connection. The goal is protecting the ego. The parent's need to feel important, admired, and in control becomes more important than supporting the child's journey toward adulthood. Understanding this truth can be life-changing. It allows adult children of narcissists to stop blaming themselves for the love they never received. The absence of healthy love was not caused by a lack of worth. It was caused by a parent whose ego occupied the space where genuine emotional connection should have existed. The greatest lesson is this: when someone's ego is more important to them than the people they claim to love, their relationships will always suffer. Genuine love grows where humility exists. Genuine love grows where accountability exists. Genuine love grows where another person's well-being matters more than protecting an image. And that is why a narcissist's greatest obstacle to loving their children is not the child's behavior, personality, or choices. It is their own unwillingness to place love above their ego.